to the goal of the mental game is to get into a flow state, right? That is the goal. So you're obviously wicked smart with all your degrees. You've worked with so many great players. Can you explain what is a flow state?
Yeah, it's a great question because when I was going through my master's and doctorate and going through the sports psychology classes, back then they would label it the zone. Okay, the zone. And it actually, believe it or not, wasn't studied much because the researchers and psychologists go, it just happens so fleeting. We're not really sure what triggers it. So it's nice to talk about, but we're going to actually talk more about this other stuff. And I go, that doesn't make sense to me. In a golf swing, do we just go, I'm going to teach you a kind of good technique? You would want to teach an optimal technique, right?
Right.
So fast forward, a gentleman by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, we call him the godfather of flow. He was a part of positive psychology, which is looking at people's strengths and values and enhancing that for livelihood, for fulfillment and happiness, right? But he tapped also into performance, and he found something called the flow state, which again now, which I'm so excited about, can be researched with brainwaves, neurochemicals, and what's actually going heart rate variability. So we now know that when we're in a flow state, when we're fully immersed in the present moment, flow follows focus, everybody. You got to be in the present, okay? And you believe you have the skills to match the challenge in front of you. So you have confidence like, I can do this. You're actually looking forward, okay, called an autotelic experience. I'm actually want to do it for just the joy of doing it itself. It's not tied to anything else. That what happens is when we're in that moment, brainwave activity starts to go down. There's less thinking, okay? Time distortion happens, and we are so absorbed in the moment, we literally are not in the future or in the past, right? But we can now train it with, I use a lot of EEG headsets, I use heart rate variability, I use some other tools to help people understand that we can train it, we can measure it, and then we can try different interventions to help, in this case, let's say, bring the brain waves down, right? Less thinking when you're executing the shot. So flow state is something that's researched. It's something that is now replacing the zone because we have all these markers that we know led to this state. We know that there's these things that lead to this. And now we can, again, in golf especially, it's a non-reactionary sport. We can reverse engineer that easier sometimes in other sports.
Yeah, that's the key, right? Is like you have to reverse engineer it. And I had a round last year that was probably my actually two of them specifically that I didn't even know where I was at in the round. And I've had students and people listen to podcasts be like, "There's no way you didn't know that." And I was like, I had no clue. And it was beautiful. Like it was so
Yes.
good. And I added up the score. I'm like, holy shit, I just 66 in this tournament. I didn't even feel like anything. And I wasn't
Right.
tired after the day. And it's just amazing when you can do it. And like after that round, I wrote down everything I did before, what I was thinking during,
Good.
because I'm just like you, right? I'm trying to reverse engineer it. I always tell all my students, write down 3 to 5 good shots you hit every round. Even your worst rounds, they have good shots, right? We got to kind of do it. But what were you thinking? What were you doing? And it's so cool when you start to find it a little bit more often. And one thing you said earlier too is that the mental game isn't like just do this approach, it works for everyone. It is individualized. Tiger Woods is very different than Sergio or Rory or insert golfer here. You have to figure out kind of what your flow state is, right? So what is you talk about getting from fear to flow. I really, really like this. I heard you say on a podcast, it's like a dimmer switch. So everyone kind of, it's not like you're in the zone or you're not, right? So it's like, what can we do? I know you talk about flow triggers and stuff inside your academy. Can you give us a few examples? Like, let's say, the biggest thing I hear from my audience is blow up holes, man. They hit one bad shot and spirals out of control, and then it's a blow up hole. Then the next hole sucks, right? We've all been there. But a lot of times, if we have some sort of mental trigger that we can do to just be like, that was one bad shot. Let's focus on the next one. Like, what are some things people can be doing during the round to calm that Hulk rage down and hopefully avoid those big numbers?
Sure. So specifically with that, I would also go back to what led to the big number in the first place. Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
breakdown in focus. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
already, if they were truthful, they were fearful over the shot. And then what you're saying, which I agree with, is emotional regulation, is the environment. I just hit a bad shot into the trees or the water. I react. Okay. And people react in a stimulus response in a very short window. And I used to slam clubs and yell and all that kind of stuff. And so at that moment, I would shift somebody from being a critical mindset, which is beating yourself up. I can't believe I did this. I suck, to a curious mindset, which is I wonder why that happened, because I certainly don't want it to happen in the future. And was that a mental error or a physical error? So a mental error would be somebody was already distracted, had doubts, wasn't committed. They hit the shot anyways. Okay. Or they can be honest and say, Rick, I went through my routine. I had a clear target. I felt relaxed, felt ready. Ball still went left. And I always joke, okay, go blame your swing coach now. Okay. Because that would be a mechanic. It would be a mechanical error now because, and maybe you have a default. I come back, I come under plane, I flip the hands, and that's just a motor pattern that you tend to have too. That's a pattern. There's mental patterns. But if after that, it's a way to diffuse that and process it. Notice I didn't say, forget about it. Your brain's not going to forget about it, everybody. Especially when you're getting frustrated, angry, you're actually putting an emotional stamp on that, and you're going to remember it even clearer next time. So process it in a way where you go, I'm going to learn. And then in between shots, I call a transitional phase. What are you doing in those 2, 3, sometimes 5 minutes? Most people are looking down at the ground, internally beating themselves up with self-talk, posture's poor, and you just see that some seething, right? So I like to get people's eyes up, call it expanded awareness, get kind of about 180 degrees around you. You could count your steps. There's mindfulness walking, there's breathing, inhale, maybe 3, exhale, 5, 6. We want to let that out, get back into the parasympathetic. So, but it's back to, we want to judge ourselves so quickly, and that judgment creates the emotion, frustration, anger. And if you don't work with it, it's like, for me, it became the bogey train pretty quick. Because emotions now are going to affect your focus. Emotions are going to affect your decision making, and emotions are going to affect literally your physical body. So we do need to process them after shots. So you will never hear me say, just forget about it. You hit it in somebody's backyard. That's okay. No, it's not. We want to hit good shots. Okay.
Right.
So let's be honest with ourselves and let's learn from that.
Okay. That's a good point. So it's okay to acknowledge it was a bad shot. I think so many of us try to bury it and just be like,
come on, everybody. It happened. Come on.
You're going to get that next ball. You're going to reload. So you have to accept it, basically. Is that, So that's
a superpower right there. Acceptance. Okay. We don't want to admit we just hit that shot. Okay. So denial is not going to do you any good. Accept it. Now, so it did happen. You now have an opportunity of how you're going to react to it or respond. React is very easy. Subconscious, you suck, Rick. Instead of saying, I go, now, honestly, I'll say that shot sucks, but I don't say you suck, Rick.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to get it detached a little bit. And that shot, or I try to get as factual as possible. That shot went 70 yards to the left of my intended line. I wonder why.
Right.
That to me is an important element.